I want to just say something about Shmuley, to be honest with you. My perspective on life, I think by the time I got into my 40s, Shmuley, I just began to see things that I couldn't explain. It's why, in many ways, I surrender to this idea of divine power in a universe where there's wisdom and there's love. And because I look at my life and it's just extraordinary to see the blessings of unanswered prayers, to see how the worst things often turn out to be the best lessons or opportunities, but also to see the gentle grace of God that I would meet people on my journey that would so source my soul and nurture my spirit. And so I came to Yale exhausted with school. I'd done an undergraduate master's at Stanford. I did 2 years at Oxford and came here. And my first year was incredible. 1L was wonderful, but the whole time I felt something was missing because I'm this random big black boy who loves Judaism and had fallen in love with it in England and had been and found a community there. And in the middle of this island in the North Atlantic, I found this incredible thing that I was told in my faith as part of the Ten Commandments, honoring the Sabbath, that honoring it by having a community around you. And the community was incredibly diverse that we created in England. It had, I brought Muslim friends of mine to the Shabbat tables. I brought Christian friends of mine, Jewish friends of mine who never even lit a Shabbat candle. People that ascribed to no faith, people that were fiercely atheists, but yet we all found this incredible community. And to me, there's a song sung during the high holidays, Hi Beiti Beit Tefillah L'Chocho Amin, Hebrew taught to me by Shmuley, that may my house be a house of prayer for many nations. And it was this one part in my life where I felt, wow, look at this diverse table. Look at this connection that I have. This is something really special. And then when I got here, I had an incredible 1L experience, but what was missing for me was something special, rooted in conceptions of faith. And that's when my divine path was led to meet Shmuley on his 21st birthday. And we talked about this grand vision for having that community, that point of community here at Yale. And it was 5 guys around a Shabbat table. I have such great memories of that apartment. It was really, really, I love the house, but that small apartment, having Shabbat dinners there became one of my favorite parts of my Yale experience. And having deep discussions about things that mattered. Not political debates, and I'm sure we've had those, and I'm sure they've been here, but really, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to live a good life? What does it mean to be a good person? And so I come back here with Shmuley. Our lives have, gone on 25 years. It's incredible to think about how much has changed. But I still, when I'm here in his presence, I feel that same innocence of 25 years ago, of 2 souls that are still seeking to see how we can connect and commune with the divine here on earth. And the way you do that, and the way I found that in Yale, was you don't do that by sitting in some isolated place and meditating in a cave. You do that by connecting with other people, especially people that may not pray like you, may not look like you, may not vote like you. But at the same time, when you see the divinity in them, nonetheless, I think that the heavens rejoice. So thank you for that. Now, forgive me because I like to pace sometimes. Your shoes are in danger, man. And I know the camera's going to have a tough time sort of keeping up to me. So this is what I'd love to do: is I'd love to maybe tell a story or two, and then I was standing here, and we started different people asking me different questions. I think it'd be much more fun, as much as this is not as intimate as the apartment, but maybe we could just have a little bit of a back and forth where you all can ask me questions, and I am an inquisitor myself, so I may ask you questions. But I know that there are a lot of people here who've never been to this house before. I know the undergraduates are not here, but a lot of law students are in this room. God bless you. I'll pray for you. But But you're at Yale, for crying out loud, which is, I mean, we literally talked my small group's tort professor out of giving us a final. I had no torts final. I mean, you want to talk about, like, I felt like that was a great instruction. It was persuasive speaking. Like, we convinced this guy, you do not want to grade our papers. We basically said, you don't want to go through that. And so I had no, and so to this day it's true, I did not learn torts until I studied for the bar. So that's when I finally learned torts. So I'm not feeling sympathy for Yale law students. I really feel sympathy for law students who go to real law schools. I mean, I mean, if you look at my transcript, which I hope nobody ever, it never surfaces. Well, my classes were not, things like, corporate transactions. They were like the Book of Job and the law. And Shmuley, you'll find it hard to believe I did really well in that class. So, but I just want you all to know that I said this and many of you probably were in the conversation I had with Chris Coons, that I feel like we're all Americans, and I know there's some people who I talked to earlier who are not citizens of this country, but you're citizens of a world that is just becoming more fractured and more strident. You're seeing more extremism. And it's a time where there's just rising hate. We were at a synagogue, Hannah and I, doing a meeting with Matt Platkin, who's the Attorney General for New Jersey, and we were meeting with a lot of Jewish leaders talking about what we were doing to try to protect synagogues in New Jersey from threats. Because hate crimes in our state, as across this country, have gone up remarkably, stunningly. I live on this great block in Newark, where at the top of my block I have a Spanish language church. At the bottom of my block I have a masjid, and it's just delicious to me. I mean, I have so many different languages spoken on my block. I have people from all around the human sort of diaspora, the globe. My neighbors, literally, they're Ecuadorians, a family from Mali, and a family from Brazil, living in the three-family home next to me. But the other day, Friday, I went down to the Juma, the Muslim call to prayer, and I went down, and I don't know what, I just felt this, because usually I just say hi to the men and women going down to pray, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam, peace be with you, and also with you as a response. And I decided just to walk down, and then I decided to go in. And next thing you know, I'm sitting in the back, praying, pointing east with these incredible people from my community, and sharing prayer. But I was as a former mayor, I noted that there were police in front protecting the mosque. And that is like reality. I'm literally working to get more money into my state to protect our religious institutions. Because from Sikh Americans to Muslim Americans to Asian Americans to Black Americans, hate crimes are going up. As Platkin said, in our state, Hannah, if I remember correctly, he said the most threatened group is Jews. They have the most hate crimes in our state against them. And it was not why I wanted to be a senator. It was to protect people from rising hate. And it gets me into this place of moral worry. Like, why are we in this society in 2022 at a point where we're seeing heights of hatred, heights of hate crimes? What is happening in our generations that we are perceiving over it? Now, I'm not saying it's unique. I mean, most people forget before World War II, there was a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden, packed. You had extremism back then too, which also correlated to now to extremisms and stratifications of wealth. You had demagoguery. We're not unique in demagoguery. There's been demagogues in every generation, from McCarthy, Father Conklin, some of you don't know, was like the #1 radio host. He'd spew anti-Semitism out there. So I struggle with this. What is the call of our generation to get out of this increasing level of hate? And I look at a lot of challenges. A pandemic, interestingly, I was talking to this Dr. Christakis, who's some of you all know him. You guys know him? Shaking head. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you guys know him. And he was telling me that, like, pandemics have done this to many societies. The weary societies coming out of pandemics, there's a lot more sense of isolation, a lot more mental health issues, and he was talking about the patterns that we often go through, fear, conspiracy theories, all the things we're seeing right now are very much a human pattern of the great plagues of the past, which I think is contributing to it. But even before the pandemic, we were seeing these things increase. I went through the toughest politics. If you ever had a chance and want to watch a movie, and I mentioned this in the talk yesterday, the movie Street Fight, which was a movie about my first run for mayor in the city of Newark. And you wouldn't believe it. I mean, it was like, thuggery and violence, and it was just basically this small group of ragtag folks trying to storm the Death Star. No, in seriousness, just trying to take down a big city machine. And it captured it unbelievably. This guy got nominated for an Academy Award. He won the Tribeca Film Festival with a documentary. And I just remember that in those days, starting out, we were still getting to a society where our politics were becoming a lot more extreme as well. And in politics, and you see it in the movie, if you have 87 minutes to spare, that we were talking to each other in a way that I just believe undermines the values that we profess to ascribe to. And so I say all this to say that my heart right now, and my team and I talk about a lot, we want to do the practical blocking and tackling of getting things done. And I'm proud of, I've been in the Senate, for the Senate it's short time, 9 years. Any other job, that's a long time. But Halloween will be my 9th anniversary in the Senate. It's a strange time. I got elected in a special election on the auspicious day of Halloween. But I'm proud that we have been folks who found ways to work across the aisle and pass the biggest comprehensive criminal justice reform. Tim Scott and I wrote this great bill called Opportunity Zones. My staff has done work on so many fronts. Probably one of the most exciting things we ever did when Ossoff and Warnock were elected. We literally didn't even wait. As soon as we knew we had 50 senators, we started lobbying with Rosa DeLauro, actually. Your Congresswoman was one of my allies in the House. I should say I was one of her allies in the Senate because she is the grande dame of this legislation. But we said, hey, let's get an expansion of the child tax credit, which for some of you who know about that what we did was, America is one of the few industrial nations that has such a low child allowance. And what the child tax credit basically did is issue the largest middle class tax cut in the history of the United States of America, more people keeping more money from their tax bill. And it cut child poverty in half. And I'm proud of this because the data that's coming out is unbelievable. Children under poverty, literally their brains have different growth patterns they now see because of the constant anxiety and stress of a family in poverty. It's like a kid in poverty is like one of us having a minor traffic accident every day. It just rattles you consistently. And so I'm proud of a lot of the things my team and I have gotten done. But we feel that part of our mission, especially that being divinely granted and granted by the voters of New Jersey, this public platform, that we think constructively about how can we be a force of healing, how can we be a force that fosters a greater sense of common purpose, a greater sense of common cause in this country. How can we be an office of that inspires the best of ourselves as well as humanity, and how can we be an office that ultimately helps our nation evidence what I think are the best values of our country, which have many different words, but I think it's love. Patriotism is love of country, but you can't love your country if you don't love your fellow countrymen and women. And that doesn't mean we have to agree on everything. Hell no, I'm sure that Shmuley and Toby do not agree on everything. Correct. but we don't have to agree on everything, but we can't hate each other. We can't have a culture of contempt. And so that's what's on my heart and mind. I hope we can have a conversation about it all. But I want you to know that, we took all of our social media platforms now, and people are like, some of my colleagues are like, what are you doing? Like, we post videos every day, have nothing to do about who to vote for, politics, policy. We just start with sort of a Devar Torah every day. I don't say Devar Torah because most of America has no idea what I'm talking about. So it's a sort of a moral message, try to speak to the best of our spirit. And we try, and again, I've had my two best teachers in my life, probably two of my better teachers, maybe I should say, were the guy I ran against in the movie Street Fight and Donald Trump. Because they showed me the best of who I am, and they showed me the worst of who I am, and things I don't like about myself that I need to work on. I mean, Donald Trump's a great example. The worst of who I was is he called other countries shithole countries, and then I had a week of really painful conversations with Haitian Americans stopping me in train stations, and I just saw how hurtful it felt to so many Americans, so many immigrants, to hear their countries of origin referred to that way. And by the time the hearing came with somebody who was in the room, and by the way, friends of mine like Lindsey Graham and others were like, yeah, he kind of said that. But the head of Homeland Security was denying it. And it was a public hearing. And we're going around, and she keeps arguing with people over this, trying to follow the line of Donald Trump. Didn't say it. Wasn't me. I think that was a great song. Wasn't me. Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? And by the time it got to me, I was so fed up, and I just vented. It was so cathartic. Speaking out of anger will be the best speech you ever regret. and I just remembered that, and afterwards, I just felt bad. That's not who I am. I don't rip into human beings just to vent upon them. But then I saw the best of myself. I still remember the first time Donald Trump ever tweeted about me, which is a great moment, by the way, because you are important enough to be tweeted about. It was incredible, incredible. At the end of his 2020 campaign, I became a part of his stump speech, which was very exciting to me. He was telling people, he was saying to people, oh, and if Biden wins, you know who he's going to put in charge of housing? It's Cory Booker. And Cory Booker's going to come to the suburbs and destroy the suburbs. And then I got weeks of the best tweets of my life, like suburban women tweeting at me saying, I hope Cory Booker comes to my suburb. I was just like, I've never felt so wanted. But it was this was before Trump was president. My first Trump tweet was when he was watching the convention, the Democratic convention, and I had given a speech that night that would have been a really great speech, but I felt like Joachim Prince. Who is Joachim Prince? If you don't know, he is a great Newark rabbi who was one of the 5 people that spoke on the March on Washington. Look up Joachim Prince's speech. It is an amazing speech, but he unfortunately was the guy that spoke right before Martin Luther King. So I gave a speech that my mom runs up to me at the end of the night and says, what an amazing speech. This is my mother. I'm like, oh, thank you, Mom. She goes, not your speech, Michelle Obama. So positioning is very important, people. So anyway, the next morning I'm on with Cuomo when he had this morning show, and they're trying to build up the drama because that's what these shows want to do. They want to fire up the hate and the conflict and whatever. So Cuomo puts the tweet up and he says, this is what's your response to Donald Trump? And I said, my response to Donald Trump is, I love you. I love you. I'm never going to let you pull me so low as to hate you. So I love you. I don't want you to be my president, but I'm not going to stop loving you. So these are my teachers. This is a guy named Sharp James and a guy named Donald Trump, because I can't control what they say, but the power you have, if you've read Man's Search for Meaning, I think this is one of the great themes of that book, is you can't control the stimulus in your life, but the power that you have is always in how you respond. And all of this stuff out here, outside of you, this is your school. It really is. Every moment, every day is your chance to learn lessons of love, in my opinion, is how are you going to choose to respond? Are you going to respond from a place of power, a place of purpose? In fact, the Parsha, for those who are Jewish in the room, we started anew with Genesis. And I never knew this. I study now with a friend of mine, the Parsha every week, and try to explain that to your sort of Catholic-ish
chief of staff that you need to schedule the senator every week to study the Parsha with some Chabad rabbi. But Veronica is a spiritual Reiki teacher. She's just, she'll read your tarot cards after this if you want. So this week's Torah portion is really great because I never saw Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. I was perplexed by it. It is about, it says the first day, there was the evening and the morning, and that was the first day. I thought the first day starts in the morning and ends at night. And what I realized, and this is sort of for me, how do I best show up for the work for the day ahead? It's by what I do the night before. Do I get a good night's sleep? Am I eating right? Or am I out drinking or what have you? All these things are preparing you to show up in the world. So for me, my journey is so much about how do I show up every day? And do I show up with my best or do I let somebody trigger me? Because when they trigger me, it's not their fault. My trigger is a signpost, to a place I have to grow and learn. If you go home this weekend and somebody in your family says something that triggers you, it's on you. It's not on them. And so this to me is, for me, the journey for myself. I can't control what everybody does in this world, but I'm going to try every day to show up with a different frequency. The story I told yesterday that really I found really powerful was when I was running for a stage in Iowa, and I was just about to jump on the stage to give a speech, and a big guy sees me and he goes, "Dude, I want you to punch Donald Trump in the face." And I go to him, "Dude, that's a felony." Something I picked up in law school, but and you don't change anything with that energy. You don't. It's like doubling down on the problem. And it may feel good to say that and to use that kind of language, but everything that you say, the power of the word, this is again all in your Genesis, this Torah portion, everything you say carries energy. Everything you do carries energy. What energy you bring into the world. And I stood up and I told the room, I said, look, Martin Luther King, when he and it really was James Bevel, Dorothea Cotton. If you know this story, Taylor Branch's book, The Children's Miracle, it is amazing that when they took on Bull Connor, it's one of my favorite moments in the civil rights movement, and they faced fire hoses and dogs, and how they beat segregation there was not by bringing bigger dogs and bigger fire hoses. It's not. They were able to change the frequency, to manifest their power. And how do you respond to this world? And they manifested their power. And they didn't just change the frequency in Birmingham. They changed the frequency in the whole nation. Suddenly, the moral imagination of the nation was expanded. The conscience of their country was pricked. And thousands of people poured into Birmingham, from Joan Baez to Dick Gregory. And what they said was the most implacable wall of segregation fell in 12 days. That's the power you have when you choose what frequency you're going to bring to the world, how you're going to perfect that frequency. And so I don't know the answers, and I hope you guys should feel free to ask me about anything. But I know there's something special when you strip away all the partisan rhetoric and the big policy debates of the day and just connect to people on a human level. There's a great book called The Souls of Black Folk, written by W.B. Du Bois, where I used to have this memorized. It was such a powerful section of the book. He goes, so forgive me, it's called a paraphrase, not a quote, because I'll get it wrong, but he's basically, in a world where it means so much to shake a person's hands, more than legislative debates and magazine articles, to sit beside someone on the same park bench, to look into their eyes and to feel their heart beat with the same blood. One could imagine the absence of these social amenities that extend to streetcars and park benches. And what he was getting at in this section of the book was how tragic it is when we are so separated from each other, even our neighbors. They have a Trump sign up, I got a Biden sign up, that you have now divorced yourself from that human connection. I love that, I think it was a Catholic missionary that told people, go out and be amongst the people until you smell like your flock. You become so intimate that your spirit, the funk of you is mixing with that of other people. It's why I love Brian Stevenson's, who was the speaker one of the speakers I was able to bring to Yale when I was here. And the poor guy, I would not let him out of my sight. I was following, please, Brian Stevenson, tell me what I should do with my life. Sensei, please. But he talks about something about staying proximate to people. Like when we go into our own little enclaves, I think we lose our ability to begin to understand our own humanity, our own power, and our own ability to connect. And I'll end with this story and then open it up. So I had this a great blessing that I pray that you all get as you get older, which is to give your parents great nachas. For those of you who don't know that word, it's just to give them great pride, And the great pride moment for me was my parents, who probably didn't know if I'd ever have enough money in my bank account to afford my own meals. I could call them up one day. I was mayor of the city of Newark, and I said to them, Mom, Dad, my dad was getting sick with Parkinson's, and I knew this was the last opportunity, and I scraped enough resources together, and I said to my mom and dad, let's go on one more family vacation. Where do you all want to go? Anywhere you want to go. Now, my parents kind of knew about my connection to the Jewish faith, but I didn't think that I thought they might say my dad loved the Caribbean, and there's lots of places I thought they might want to go. But without hesitation, my mom says, I want to go to Israel. For me, that was the most meaningful thing she could say to me. I was stoked. And so I call a friend of mine, Abe Eisenstadt, who is I wouldn't say this if he was around because I don't want his head to get big, but he's one of the more surround yourself with friends that make you a better person, that you aspire to be like. What's that old book there's a book that was written that said you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But I call this guy up that makes me a better person, a friend that makes me a better person. And I say, my mom and dad want to go to Israel, can you help me? And so he says, enough, I'm going to help arrange everything. And so he puts together this amazing trip. Now, at this point, I have death threats against me. The FBI had been warning us. I'm mayor of the city of Newark. We're taking on a lot of tough elements. And my security detail, one of whom is still with me outside right now, I think, says to me, we should go with you. And I'm like, look, I don't think the Bloods and the Crips are going to follow me to Israel. I'm not really worried about it. But the 2 guys that my friend had engaged he said, look, I'm going to make sure that they are the best people. And so there were 2 guys who had a tour company who also were former Israeli special forces, which if you know Israel kind of makes sense, These guys have a little business on the side, So I go out there and I meet these 2 guys. Now, let me just tell you, Israeli special forces guys are far more intimidating than the average Chabad rabbi that I know from the United States. These guys were tough, and I'm a big dude, but these guys, immediately I realized, these guys probably could kill me in 500 ways. And they were tough and gruff and very formal in the way that Shmuley tried to be when I first walked up, and hello, Mr. Mayor, and very formal. And I'm just trying to break the ice. None of my jokes are landing. And these guys drive my family to the King David Hotel. We put my parents asleep. I'm dead tired. I'm going to sleep as well. And they go look at me and they go, we will go for a ride. And I'm looking at Abe. I'm like, what? and he looks at me and goes, I think we should go with them. And so I jump in this Jeep, middle of the night, and we drive, and they're silent. I'm trying to make small talk, and I'm getting no small talk out of them. We're just driving, and then we go off the highway into the desert. And now we're going out in the desert. And now I think I'm a brave guy. But now my cell phone service, no bars. And I'm like, oh my God, is this what they do to the Goyim when they get them over here? What is about to happen to me? And so now I'm like, oh, I should have brought my security detail. And then we go up this like rise, and then suddenly I see all the lights of the city. And we get out, and they say, we will build a campfire. We want to get to know the mayor of New Jersey. And I'm like, just Newark. And so they build this campfire, and they just open up. And these guys have such, like they could literally point to everything in my vista and tell me recent military history, ancient biblical history, things I just didn't know about Muslims and Jews fighting together to repel the crusading Christians. You know, it's like this, like I was blown away by their knowledge and their history. And then they point out in the distance and show me Mount Nebo. And as soon as they tell me it's Mount Nebo, I get chills. Because I'm one of the few, again, non-Jews, who often knows the Parsha of the week. And when I heard it was Mount Nebo, I connected immediately in my mind the Parsha of the week with the fact that I'm standing in front of the Mount Nebo. And so I said, we got to pull out the Torah, and you've got to pull out your iPad, which in modern Israel, everybody's got both. And so they pull out the Torah, and I say the Torah portion this week. But before that, I want to tell you that why that mountain is so important to me as a black guy from America. And I said one of the most important speeches in modern American history, that mountain was the metaphorical device used in that speech. Because for those of you who don't know Mount Nebo, which we just finished a week or two ago, in this section of the Torah, is where Moses goes to the mountaintop, sees the promised land, but can't go there. Still struggling with just because he struck a rock. I try to walk gingerly around rocks, don't want to tick off God. And so I play on the iPad Martin Luther King's final speech. So imagine this in the desert. 4 guys standing there, and the words of Martin Luther King, I have been to the mountaintop, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land. And he ends his speech, I think, with, mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. And he predicted his death. And then I tell him he went to the Lorraine Motel, goes to bed, wakes up, goes on the balcony, and is slain. Now, Veronica and I get to travel a lot. We were just down in Memphis. And these are the blessings of my life, because I'd been to this museum before at the Lorraine Motel, but this time, as a senator, they come up to me and say, we have some keys. We're going to take you onto the balcony. And when I stepped out on the balcony, I got overcome with emotion, and I'm fighting back tears. Kevin, who's with us, who's been with me from the beginning, gets on a knee. They tell me there's a line on the pavement of the trajectory of the bullet that struck King's head. And I just stand there. But at the bottom, I know this. I look down to look for it because I want to see it. Because what I said to the men in the desert, that if you went to the Lorraine Motel and you stood where King stood and you looked, you would see words from the Torah marking the death of this great American, this great Christian pastor. And the words of the Torah were the words from the Parsha of that week. And they're a challenge to everyone here. Every generation that would come that was not alive, like me and all of you, that was not alive when King was alive. And I recited the words of the Torah in that desert, as King's words still seemed to be fading into the night. They're the words of Joseph's brothers, who, seeing Joseph, proclaimed these words before they grabbed him and threw him into a well to die. And the words written there are, behold, here cometh the dreamer. Let us slay him and see what becomes of his dream. That's the question right now. It's a question we have to answer. I think the dream is, like Langston Hughes says, there's a dream in this land with its back against the wall. To save the dream, for one, we must save the dream for all. I'm telling you right now, whatever you do in your life, wherever we go, whatever jobs we have, if you love this country, love her people, and be one of the folks that dedicates themselves to saving the dream. No.
Let's get a standing ovation. No, everybody up. Everybody up.
Too much. Okay, sit down.
Now, let us stand.